The rain fell in relentless sheets, blurring the lights of the New York City skyline. From the floor to ceiling windows of his penthouse, Henry Caldwell stared out at the storm, his reflection a pale shadow against the glass. The city below, alive with energy and chaos, felt a world away from the quiet emptiness inside his immaculate home. The modern space was pristine, every marble countertop polished, the leather furniture untouched, as if the room had been designed for display rather than comfort. Silence hung heavy, broken only by the distant hum of city traffic and the occasional crackle from the dying embers in the fireplace. Henry had everything: wealth, power, influence. And yet, he felt nothing. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight when Henry finally rose from his chair. Another long, empty night with no one to share it with. The ache in his chest wasn't physical, but it was familiar, a dull, hollow weight he had carried since betrayal had shattered his trust years ago. He grabbed his coat and keys, deciding to take a late-night drive through the rain. Anything to escape the walls closing in around him. The streets were nearly deserted, rain pelting the sidewalks in shimmering waves. As Henry's sleek black car pulled into the underground parking garage beneath his building, a shadow caught his eye near the entrance to the alleyway. At first he thought it was a pile of discarded clothes left in the rain, but as his headlights swept over the figure, he realized it was a person. A young woman, curled against the damp brick wall, knees drawn to her chest, her body trembling beneath a soaked, oversized hoodie. Henry's stomach tightened. He killed the engine and sat for a moment, debating. He didn't get involved. Ever. But something about the way she hugged herself, the way her face was hidden in her arms, it felt wrong to just drive away. Stepping out, the rain hit him like a cold slap, soaking his hair in seconds. His shoes splashed through puddles as he approached the alley cautiously. "Hey," he called out, voice firm but not unkind. The girl startled, shrinking further into the shadows. "I'm not going to hurt you," Henry added quickly, hands raised in a gesture of peace. She looked up then, her face pale beneath strands of damp, tangled hair. Her eyes, an arresting shade of green, met his with defiant clarity despite her vulnerable state. "I'm fine," she said hoarsely, her voice rough from the cold. "You're clearly not fine." She lifted her chin. "I didn't break in. I'm just trying to stay dry. I'll leave if you want me to." Henry hesitated. The rational part of him said to walk away. But her voice, that quiet dignity despite her condition, it stirred something unexpected. He took a cautious step closer. "You're freezing. How long have you been out here?" A pause. She shifted, as if debating how much to reveal. "Since this afternoon." Henry exhaled slowly, his gaze sweeping over her soaked clothes, the way she shivered uncontrollably. "Look," he said, softer this time. "I'm not calling the cops, but you can't stay here like this. It's dangerous. Come inside, just warm up. Take a shower, then you can go." Her eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering behind them. "Why would you do that?" He hesitated, struggling to find an answer that made sense even to himself. "I don't know," he admitted. "But you're clearly in trouble. And I'm not the kind of person who can just walk away from that." She studied him for a moment longer, rain dripping from her lashes. Then finally she gave a small, reluctant nod. "Okay, just for a little while." Henry led her through the back entrance, guiding her toward the elevator that opened directly into his penthouse. The silence between them was thick, tense. Emily, he had learned her name when she whispered it as they stepped inside, stood awkwardly near the door, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. Henry handed her a towel, gesturing toward the hallway. "Bathrooms through there. There's a robe you can use. I'll get you something warm to drink." She nodded mutely, disappearing down the hall. Henry released a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. What was he doing? Bringing a stranger, someone clearly living on the streets, into his home. He wasn't careless. He had been burned before. But something about her, it wasn't pity. It was curiosity. Or maybe something deeper, something he wasn't ready to name. The sound of running water echoed from the bathroom, filling the silence. Henry busied himself in the kitchen, brewing tea, his mind racing with questions. Who was she, really? What had led her to this point? And why did he feel this strange need to help? Outside the bathroom, Henry sat at the edge of the oversized leather sofa, nursing a cup of tea that had long since gone cold. The city lights glittered through the rain-speckled windows, casting shifting patterns across the dark wooden floors. He couldn't stop thinking about her. Emily. She was just a girl, someone down on her luck. But there was something different. The way she had looked at him when he'd first offered help, not with desperation or gratitude, but with defiance. Pride. It reminded him of himself. Once. Before betrayal had taught him that trusting people only led to pain. And yet, here she was. A stranger, vulnerable and hurting, standing in his home. And he couldn't shake the feeling there was more to her story. The sound of the bathroom door opening made him turn. And when he saw her, his breath caught. Emily stepped out, her damp hair falling softly around her face, the oversized robe cinched tightly around her waist. But it wasn't just the change in appearance that struck him. It was the way she stood, shoulders squared, as if bracing herself for rejection. The quiet strength in her eyes. Like she had been fighting a battle alone for far too long. Henry cleared his throat, setting down his untouched cup. "Feel better?" She nodded, her fingers tightening around the edges of the robe as if trying to shrink inside it. "Yes, thank you, really." Henry gestured toward the steaming cup he had placed on the marble countertop earlier. "I made tea, if you want it." Emily hesitated for a heartbeat before stepping closer. She wrapped her hands around the cup, savoring its warmth, though she barely met his gaze. "Thank you," again. Her voice was softer this time, more sincere. Henry nodded but said nothing. Silence stretched between them, the rain outside the only sound filling the space. Finally, Emily shifted, placing the cup back down. "I should go," she said quietly, already glancing toward the door. "You've done more than enough. I don't want to impose." Henry blinked, caught off guard. She wanted to leave. Wait. The word was out before he could stop it. Emily paused, frowning slightly as she turned back toward him. Henry exhaled, running a hand through his hair, unsure why he felt so compelled to stop her. "You don't have anywhere to go, do you?" Her lips parted as if she wanted to argue, but she didn't. Instead, her gaze dropped, her fingers clenching around the fabric of the robe. "No, but that's not your problem. I can figure it out." Henry shook his head, the tension inside him growing. "This city? In the middle of the night? That's not safe. I can handle myself." Her voice was calm, but the slight tremble in it betrayed her. Henry could see the exhaustion in her face now, the way her shoulders sagged despite her defiant words. "Stay," he said firmly, softer this time. "At least for tonight. It's just one night. You can leave in the morning if you want." Emily hesitated, searching his face as if trying to decipher his motives. "Why are you being so nice to me?" she whispered. Henry's chest tightened. Because no one was kind when he needed it most. Because he knew what it felt like to be lost. Because, despite everything, he didn't want her to leave. But he didn't say any of that. Instead, he shrugged, masking his emotion behind that same detached exterior. Everyone deserves a safe place to sleep. Emily swallowed hard, the wall she had built threatening to crumble just a little. She wanted to say no. She wanted to run. But the warmth of the tea lingered in her hands, and the storm outside raged on. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, just tonight." Henry nodded back. He pointed toward the guest room down the hall. "There are fresh towels and blankets. If you need anything, I'll be out here." Emily murmured a quiet thank you and disappeared into the guest room, closing the door softly behind her. Henry exhaled, sinking back onto the couch, the tension still knotted tight in his chest. What was he doing? She was just a stranger, a homeless girl who needed help. But when he closed his eyes, all he could see was the way she had looked at him, like someone afraid to be seen yet desperate to be understood. And he couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't just passing through his life. She was about to change it forever. The morning sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Henry's penthouse, casting a golden glow over the sleek surfaces. The rain from the night before had cleared, leaving the city skyline sparkling in the distance. The scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the warmth of toast and eggs sizzling on the stovetop. Henry stood at the kitchen island, quietly preparing breakfast while his thoughts churned. She stayed. He hadn't expected her to. Emily had barely spoken since he offered her a place to stay the night before. She had disappeared into the guest room and closed the door. And for hours he had wondered if she'd simply vanish by morning. But here she was, stepping cautiously out of the hallway, her damp hair braided, still wearing the oversized robe he had offered her. She looked different. Not just cleaner but softer somehow, less guarded. And yet there was still something hidden behind her eyes. "Good morning," Henry said, keeping his voice calm as she hesitated near the table. Morning. Emily's voice was quiet, cautious. He gestured toward the plate he'd just set down. I made breakfast. If you're hungry. She blinked, clearly surprised. You didn't have to do that. Henry shrugged. You need to eat. Sit. Reluctantly, she lowered herself into the chair, her fingers tracing the edge of the napkin like she wasn't used to such comfort. They ate in near silence, the clinking of forks against plates the only sound between them. Henry stole glances at her, waiting for her to speak. Finally, he broke the quiet. You stayed. I wasn't sure you would. Emily looked down at her plate. I almost didn't. Henry nodded slowly, setting down his fork. But you did. She met his gaze then, her expression softer but still wary. I didn't have anywhere else to go, she admitted, voice tinged with quiet honesty. Henry nodded, leaning back in his chair. Do you have anywhere to go, I mean? Family? Friends? Emily's eyes dropped again, her fingers curling slightly. I used to, she whispered. Silence stretched between them again, heavier this time. Henry felt the urge to press for more but resisted. She wasn't ready. But the curiosity gnawed at him. Who was she? As Emily finished the last bite of toast, Henry collected their plates and set them in the sink. You can stay longer if you need to, he offered quietly, without turning around. When he glanced back, she looked genuinely taken aback. I don't want to be a burden, she replied. You're not. The words hung there, a little too honest, a little too vulnerable. Later that morning, as Henry worked from his home office, he found his mind drifting back to Emily. She was still in the guest room, quiet. Too quiet. He stood, curiosity pulling him down the hallway. The door was ajar, and for a moment he hesitated. But then, through the crack, he saw her. Emily stood by the large painting on the far wall, an original piece by a renowned artist. The artwork was worth more than most people made in a year. And she wasn't just looking. She was tracing her fingertips over the delicate frame, her head tilted as if memorizing every detail. Henry's stomach tightened. Was she planning something? Don't be stupid, Henry. But old wounds whispered in his mind. People always want something. Trust gets you hurt. He stepped into the room, his voice sharper than intended. What are you doing? Emily jumped, spinning around. I'm sorry. I wasn't touching it. I just... Henry folded his arms, brow furrowing. It's expensive. You were looking pretty closely. Hurt flashed across her face. Do you think I'm here to steal from you? Silence. Henry shifted uncomfortably, but didn't answer. Emily straightened, her voice trembling but steady. I get it. You don't trust me. People don't trust girls like me, right? I'm just the homeless woman you took pity on. Henry opened his mouth to speak, but she cut him off, voice rising. Not everyone is out to take advantage of you, Henry. She moved toward the door, her hands shaking. Look, you've done enough. I'll leave. Clearly, you think the worst of me. Henry felt the sting of his own words as he watched her turn. But as she reached for her bag near the bed, something tumbled out. A small, worn photograph fluttered to the floor. Henry instinctively bent down and picked it up. His breath caught. The picture was old but well preserved. A younger Emily stood beside an older woman who resembled her, maybe a mother. The background wasn't a run-down alley but a well-kept garden, both of them smiling, vibrant, happy. Not broken, not lost. Emily froze as she noticed him holding it. Where did you get this? He asked, voice softer now. She swallowed hard, her guard crumbling. It's all I have left of my mom. Henry hesitated, something shifting inside him. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have assumed. She shook her head, blinking back tears. No, it's fine. I'm used to it. Henry stepped closer, still holding the photo. You weren't always living on the streets, were you? A pause. And then, her voice softer, broken. No. Henry stared at her, the fragile edges of trust forming between them. And for the first time, he realized there was so much more to her story. And he needed to know it. Stay, he said quietly, holding the photo back to her. Just stay a little longer. Let me help. Tears welled in her eyes, but this time, she didn't argue. She nodded. And just like that, the walls between them began to crack. The rain had stopped by evening, leaving the city bathed in a soft, pale glow from the setting sun. The penthouse felt quieter than usual, the tension between Henry and Emily lingering in the air like an unspoken weight. Henry sat on the corner of the couch, flipping absently through a book he wasn't really reading. Across the room, Emily sat by the window, gazing out over the glittering skyline. For the past few days she had stayed, but the silence between them was growing heavier, as if they were both waiting for the other to break it. It was Henry who finally spoke, his voice low. "You don't have to keep staying if you don't want to. I don't want you to feel trapped here." Emily turned, her expression softer now. "I know. I don't really have anywhere else right now." A beat passed before she added quietly, "But I appreciate what you've done for me. No one else has." Henry nodded, his fingers tightening around the book. The vulnerability in her voice stirred something deep within him. Later that evening, they sat together at the kitchen island, the glow of the city casting shadows across the marble countertops. The quiet tension lingered, but something had shifted. Henry poured 2 cups of tea and finally broke the silence. "You asked why I don't trust people." Emily looked up, surprised by his sudden honesty. He stared into his cup, his voice quiet but steady. "I wasn't always like this. I used to believe the best in people, thought I could help everyone, make a difference. But then..." His jaw tightened. "My best friend, and the woman I was engaged to," he exhaled, as if forcing the words out. "They were working together, stole from me. Not just money. They almost destroyed everything I built. The company, my reputation, everything." Emily's eyes softened. He had seemed untouchable when she first met him, but now he felt human. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. Henry shrugged, his expression guarded once more. "Since then, I've kept people at a distance. It's easier, safer." He looked up, meeting her gaze. "But I don't want to be like that anymore." Silence settled again, heavier this time, as if his confession had shifted something unspoken between them. Finally, Emily inhaled deeply, as if gathering courage. "I wasn't always like this either," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. Henry leaned closer, listening intently. "My mom, she was everything to me. Strong, kind. She worked so hard just to give me a shot at life. But when she got sick, everything changed." Her voice cracked, but she continued. "I left college early to take care of her. I tried to juggle it all, work, medical bills, but it wasn't enough. When she passed, she looked away, blinking back tears. I was alone, and everything we had fell apart. The house, my job. I just lost control." Henry watched her closely, his heart tightening at the pain in her voice. She wasn't just surviving. She had been fighting for so long. Henry spoke gently. "You never told me what you were doing before all this." Emily managed a faint, bitter smile. "I was trying to start a small bakery. It was my dream. But I was in over my head. Too many loans. And when my mom got sick, I had to let it go. Lost everything. And once you're down like that, it feels impossible to climb back up." Henry was silent for a moment, then set his tea down. "You don't have to stay down, you know." Emily blinked, surprised by his words. "You're stronger than you think," he continued, his voice firmer now. "You kept going when most people would have given up. That says something." She shook her head, her voice fragile. "It doesn't feel like strength. It feels like surviving. Barely." Henry exhaled slowly. "Surviving is strength, and you have it, Emily, whether you see it or not." In the days that followed, something shifted. Henry began leaving small books on the coffee table, self-help guides, business journals, even a few novels he thought she might enjoy. At first, Emily was hesitant, but eventually he caught her reading late into the night, absorbed in the words. He started encouraging her to consider job options, even printing out a list of nearby places hiring. And when he mentioned her dream of baking, she hesitated, but there was a spark in her eyes he hadn't seen before. They were healing, together. But trust was still fragile, and cracks were beginning to show. One afternoon, Henry received a call. The screen flashed a name he hadn't seen in years, Michael Green. His former business partner. The one who had betrayed him. Henry's hand clenched around the phone, his pulse quickening. He hesitated before answering, his voice cold. "What do you want?" Michael's voice was smooth, too smooth. "Just heard you've been keeping some interesting company lately. Figured I'd check in. See if you're making the same mistakes, trusting the wrong people again." Henry's stomach twisted. His eyes flicked toward the guest room where Emily was reading quietly, unaware of the storm building just beyond the door. His voice dropped. "This isn't your business anymore. Stay out of it." Michael chuckled. "De Miken Falft. Just be careful, Henry. People don't change, remember that." The line went dead. Henry stared at the phone for a long moment, his mind racing. Michael was wrong. Emily was different. But the old scars whispered, what if she wasn't? And suddenly, The walls he had been trying so hard to tear down began building back up again. The penthouse was unusually quiet that afternoon. The city below hummed softly, but inside, tension clung to the air like an approaching storm. Henry sat in his home office, reviewing documents, but his focus kept drifting. His mind was restless, shadows of doubt circling like vultures. Michael's words from the phone call echoed relentlessly. "People don't change. Be careful who you trust." Henry shook it off, staring out at the skyline. Emily isn't like that. But then why was he still second-guessing her? Why couldn't he shake this feeling that something wasn't right? From the hallway, the soft murmur of Emily's voice broke the silence. Henry frowned, standing. The guest room door was slightly ajar. Emily sat on the edge of the bed, her back turned to him, speaking into the phone in a hushed tone. He wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but the words froze him. "Yes, I'm still here. He doesn't know. I just need to figure out how to get access to the money. It's a large sum, enough to make things right." Henry's heart clenched. Enough to make things right. A cold wave of realization hit him. His chest tightened as the old scars resurfaced, the betrayal, the lies. The kindness he had shown her, was she just using him? Emily hung up the call, unaware he was standing in the doorway. When she turned and saw him, the gentle smile on her face faded instantly. "Henry, what's wrong?" He took a slow step forward, his expression guarded, voice tight with restrained anger. "Who were you talking to?" She blinked, taken aback. It was personal. Personal, he repeated bitterly. Sounded more like financial. Her brows furrowed. "What? No, it's not what you think." Henry's voice sharpened, cutting her off. "I let you into my home, trusted you, and all along you were planning this, weren't you? Lying, manipulating me." Emily's face drained of color. "Henry, what are you talking about?" He stepped closer, fists clenched at his sides. "I heard you, Emily. Talking about a large sum of money. Enough to make things right? What does that mean? Were you waiting for the perfect moment to cash in? Was all of this," he gestured around the penthouse, voice trembling, "just a setup?" Her breath hitched, eyes wide with disbelief. "You think I'm using you? After everything I told you? After everything we've shared?" Henry's silence spoke louder than words. Emily's voice cracked, the pain evident. "I told you the truth about my mother, about losing everything. And you think I've been lying this entire time?" He stared at her, but his walls were already up, reinforced by years of distrust and Michael's poison. "Prove me wrong," he said coldly. Tears welled in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Her hands trembled as she reached into her bag, pulling out a folded piece of paper. She held it out toward him, her voice unsteady. This is what you heard me talking about." Henry hesitated before snatching the paper. He unfolded it, scanning the contents. It was a legal document, a letter from a small law firm. A pending settlement. Emily's voice was barely a whisper now. "I was calling the lawyer handling my mother's estate. The settlement's been delayed for months. It's not much, but it's enough to start over. I was going to pay you back, Henry. Every cent. Because I didn't want you to think I needed charity." Henry felt the ground shift beneath him. Guilt, shame. But it was too late. The damage had been done. Emily shook her head slowly, voice breaking. "I trusted you, Henry. I thought we were finally," she swallowed hard. "I thought you understood me. But you don't, do you? You still see me as some charity case. Someone who couldn't possibly be here for anything real." "Emily, No." She backed away, her arms wrapping around herself as though holding the pieces together. "I opened up to you. I let you see parts of me I don't show anyone. And you," her voice cracked, "you saw me as a liar, just like everyone else." Henry felt like the air had been knocked from his lungs. "Emily, wait." But she was already moving, grabbing her worn bag, heading for the door. The rain had started again, soft and cold against the windows. Henry stood frozen as the door shut behind her with a hollow click. The echo lingered far longer than it should have. And in that silence, all he could think was, "I've just lost her." Several weeks later, the city felt colder without her. Henry stood at the massive windows of his penthouse, the same view he had once found so captivating, so powerful. Now, it felt empty. The rain had returned, streaking the glass in thin lines, blurring the skyline he once admired. But none of it mattered. Not the wealth, not the success. He had pushed her away. And now, she was gone. The memory haunted him. The look in her eyes when she had held out the settlement letter. The way her voice had cracked when she asked if he thought she was just another liar. And he had doubted her. He had allowed his past to blind him. And for weeks, regret had gnawed at him. He had tried calling. No answer. He had visited the few shelters he could think of. Nothing. And every night, the silence of his penthouse felt heavier. Until tonight. Tonight, something had to change. Redemption begins. The call came unexpectedly. Henry had been scrolling through old messages, his mind spiraling deeper into regret when his assistant Carol called. "Sir, I think I found her." Henry's heart jolted. "Where?" "St. Mark's Shelter. She's been volunteering there every evening, helping women get back on their feet." Henry felt his breath catch. Even after everything, she was still helping others. The shelter was a modest brick building tucked into a quiet neighborhood. No luxury. No shine. Just a safe space for those in need. Henry's car felt out of place as he pulled up, the sleek black exterior glistening under the drizzle. He hesitated at the door, the knot in his chest tightening. But he had to do this. Inside, the scent of warm food and clean linen lingered. Soft voices echoed from the common room where a group of women were folding donated clothes and chatting quietly. And then he saw her. Emily. She sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by a few young women, gently explaining how to fill out job applications. Her face was tired but calm, her hair pulled back into a loose braid. But the light, the spark he remembered, seemed dimmer now. And it was his fault. She hadn't seen him yet. Henry swallowed hard, his heart thudding painfully as he stepped forward. "Emily." She looked up. For a heartbeat, the room seemed to freeze. Her lips parted, surprise flashing across her face, but it was quickly replaced by caution. The warmth she had once shown him was gone, replaced with walls he had built himself. Henry took a breath, voice low. "Can we talk, please?" They stepped into a quiet corner of the shelter. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Henry searched for the right words, feeling more vulnerable than he had in years. "Emily, I was wrong." She crossed her arms, her gaze guarded. "I know." The softness of her voice broke him more than anger ever could. "I let my past cloud my judgment. I accused you of things that weren't true. And I'm sorry. I was scared. Of getting hurt. Of being vulnerable. But that's no excuse for how I treated you." Her eyes shimmered, but she held firm. "You didn't just doubt me, Henry. You doubted who I am. I trusted you. I opened up to you, and you still saw me as someone you needed to protect yourself from." Henry nodded, his throat tight. "I know. And I hate that I made you feel that way." He took a step closer, voice breaking. "You've been through so much, Emily. And yet you're here, helping people, fighting for others when you're still healing yourself. That's strength. That's courage. And I finally understand, it's not your struggles that define you. It's your heart. And I see it now. I don't care about your past or your pain. I care about you." Tears welled in her eyes, but she shook her head. "Henry, I need more than words. I need trust. I can't be with someone who questions me every time things get hard." He nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "You're right. I need to do better. I will do better. If you give me the chance." Silence. And then, her hand reached for his, tentative but real. "I'm scared too," she whispered. Henry brushed his thumb over her knuckles, his voice steady. "Then we can be scared together." Weeks later, a new beginning. The sun beamed brightly over the small building with the newly painted sign. The Rosewood Center for Women. It was everything Emily had once dreamed of. A safe space where women like her, women who had been abandoned, struggling, lost, could rebuild their lives. And Henry had made sure it wasn't just a donation. He had partnered with her, encouraging her to lead the project while he handled the financial backing quietly from the sidelines. This was her dream. And today it had come true. Emily stood by the entrance, smiling as the first group of women walked through the doors. Henry approached quietly, watching her from a distance before finally stepping beside her. She looked up, her smile soft and genuine. "You did this," she whispered. He shook his head. "No, we did this." They stood there, hand in hand, watching as the women inside began their journeys toward healing. The past wasn't forgotten, but together, they were building something stronger, something real. And so, Henry and Emily's story reminds us that love isn't just about wealth or appearances, it's about trust, forgiveness, and seeing the true strength within each other. If this heartfelt journey touched you, don't forget to like, comment, and share this video with someone who needs a reminder of the power of compassion. And for more inspiring stories that warm the heart and restore faith in humanity, be sure to subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time for another unforgettable story.